Brother Amari, Islam.
Islam family. First and foremost, I rise, giving praises to the Almighty, Father God, giving honors to his prophet Noble Drew Ali. I want to give honors to temple number 10, the Grand Sheikh and Sheikhs of temple number 10. I want to give honors to all Moors in attendance physically and spiritually. Islam. Quran questions for Moorish children. Also the question and answer period. And if you would like to just build or add on, please feel free to raise your hand and we can do so. It is. Islam. 1. Who made you?
Allah.
2. Who is Allah?
Allah is the Father of the universe.
3. Can we see him?
No.
4. Where's the nearest place we can meet him?
In the heart.
5. Who is Noble Drew Ali? 5. Who is Noble Drew Ali?
He is the prophet of Allah. He
is
Allah's prophet.
6. What is a prophet?
Prophet of Allah manifested in the flesh.
7. What is the duty of a prophet?
To save the nations from the wrath of Allah.
8. Who is the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America?
Noble Drew Ali.
9. What year was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded?
1913 AD.
10. Where?
Newark, New Jersey.
11. Where was Noble Drew Ali born?
In the state of North Carolina, 1886.
12. What is his nationality?
Moorish American.
13. What is your nationality?
Moorish American.
14. Why are we Moorish Americans?
Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America.
15. For what purpose was the Moorish Science Temple of America founded?
For the upliftment of fallen humanity.
16. How did the prophet begin to uplift the Moorish American?
By teaching them to lead themselves.
17. What is our religion?
Islamism.
18. Is that a new or is that an old time religion?
The old time religion.
19. What kind of flag is the Moorish?
It is the red flag with 5 pointed green star in the center.
20. What do the 5 points represent?
Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
21. How old is our flag?
It is over 50,000 years old.
22. Which is our holy day?
Friday.
23. Why?
Because Friday the man was formed into flesh, and it was on the Friday man departed out of flesh.
24. Who is Jesus?
He was the prophet of Allah.
25. Where was he born?
In Bethlehem of Judah, in the house of David.
26. Who were his father and mother?
Joseph and Mary.
27. Will you give in brief the line genealogy through which Jesus came?
Some of the great fathers through which Jesus came are Abraham, Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary.
28. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth?
To save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, who were governing a portion of Palestine at that time.
29. How long has that been?
About 2,000 years ago.
30. What was the nationality of Ruth?
Ruth was the Moabites.
31. What is the modern name for Moabites?
Moroccans,
32. Where's the Moroccan Empire?
northwest of Mexico.
33. What is the modern name for a Mexican?
Africa.
34. What is the title given to our ruler in Morocco?
Sultan
35. Where do we get the name Jesus?
from the east.
36. What does the name Jesus mean?
Jesus means justice.
37. Did the angel give to the child that was called Jesus a holy name?
Yes,
Yes,
but it cannot be used by those who are slaves to sin.
38. What is an angel?
an angel
The thought of God manifested in the human flesh.
39. What are angels used for?
Nation to the four corners of the world, to all nations.
all nations.
40. What is our prophet to us?
He is an angel of Allah who was sent to bring us the everlasting gospel of Allah.
41. What is the everlasting gospel?
It
It is
is
the
the saving
saving
power
power that comes from Allah through our ancient fathers.
42. What is the covenant of the great God Allah?
Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth land
which the Lord thy God has given thee.
43. At what age did Jesus begin to teach?
At
at the age of 12.
44. Where did he teach?
India, Africa, and Europe.
45. How long did he teach?
18 years.
46. What did Jesus say that would make you free?
Truth.
47. What is truth?
Truth is God.
48. What is ought?
All is the law.
49. Can truth change?
Truth cannot change or pass away.
50. What other name do we give truth?
Holy breath.
51. What have you to say about holy breath?
All we can say is it is great, it is
It's
good,
good, it was, it is, and evermore to be.
Amen.
52. At what place on earth was the physical part of man formed?
In the Garden of Eden.
53. Where's the Garden of Eden?
In the land of Canaan, in the city of Mecca.
54. What is the modern name for the Garden of Eden?
Mecca.
55. What is the name of the first physical man?
There cannot be used only by the executive rulers of the AC, of the MST, of A.
56. What are the words of AC of the MST of A?
Adam
Chamber of the Memorial Science Temple of America, third heaven.
57. Who were Adam and Eve?
They are the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatics and Muslims.
58. Where did they go?
They went to Asia.
59. What is the modern name given to the children?
Asiatics.
60. Who was guarding the holy city of Mecca today to keep unbelievers away?
Angels.
61. What is the modern name for those angels?
Asiatics.
62. What is the shade of their skin?
Olive.
63. Are the Moorish American any relation to those angels?
Yes, we all have the same father and mother.
64. Give 5 names that are given to the descendants of Adam and Eve.
Lucifer, Satan, devil, dragon, and beast.
65. What is the devil sometimes called?
The lower self.
66. How many selves are there?
2.
67. Name them.
Higher self and lower self.
68. What people represent the higher self?
Angels who protect the holy city of Mecca.
69. What people represent the lower self?
Those who were cast out of the holy city and those who accept their teachings.
70. What is the higher self?
The higher self is the mother of virtues, the harmonies of life that breeds justice, mercy, love, and right.
71. Can the higher self pass away?
No,
72. Why?
because it is Allah and man.
73. What does the lower self breed?
Hatred, slander, rudeness, murder, theft, and everything that harms.
74. What did the higher self say to the lower self at one time when he met him?
Where are you going, Satan?
75. What was the answer the lower self gave to the higher self?
I am going to and fro the earth, seeking whom I may devour.
76. Has he finished his task of devouring?
Yes,
77. When was his time to clear it out?
when he nailed Jesus to the cross.
78. What were the last words Jesus uttered?
It is finished.
79. What did he have reference to?
He had reference to the end of Satan.
80. Did Jesus say he would return to conquer him?
Yes,
81. What is the name of the person whom Jesus was first reincarnated?
Prophet Muhammad the Conqueror.
82. Is Satan to be bound in?
Satan was to be bound in part.
83. When was the head of Satan taken off?
1453,000 times.
84. By whom?
By Muhammad.
85. Name some of the marks that were put upon the Moors of Northwest by the European nations in 1774.
Negro, black, colored, and Ethiopian.
86. Negro.
Negro, a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors
because
because
it
it contains
contains
black
black
water.
87. What is meant by the word black?
Black, according to science, means death.
88. What does the word colored mean?
Color means anything that is painted, stained, varnished, or dyed.
89. What does Ethiopia mean?
Ethiopia means something divided.
90. Can a man be Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian?
No,
91. Why?
Because man is made in the image and after the likeness of God Allah.
92. What title does Satan give himself?
God.
93. Will you define the word white?
White means purity. Purity means God. God means ruler of the land.
94. To whom do we refer at times being the great God?
Allah.
95. Is the devil made in the image and the likeness of Allah?
No. He is the shadow of our Lord selves and will pass away.
96. Who made the devil?
Elohim.
97. Who is Elohim?
Elohim is the seven created spirits that create everything that was, is, and evermore to be.
98. What is Elohim sometimes called?
The seven eyes of Allah.
99. How many days are in a circle?
7 days.
100. How many days are there in the creation?
7 days.
101. According to science, how many days are in the year?
7 days.
Islam. Any questions? Other 101s? Any add-ons? No. Next, I call up Sheikh Shatik. We're the first to demonstrate this lovely day. Islam, fam.
Islam.
A lovely day it is. It's a beautiful day that Allah has allowed us all to wake up and see. Don't you agree? It's a beautiful day that the Prophet has laid out these lessons for us to have for the instructions of our life. Islam? Okay, having said that, I'm going to get right at it. I'm not going to take up much of y'all's time. But I'd like to go into this here very important topic. Tomorrow's leaders, historical message to America. In connection with the aims, objects, rules, and regulations of the Moorish Science Temple of America, I deem it proper to submit to you a brief statement of our organization, because a lot of people still get this confused. They don't know what the organization is for. They say it's just a religious organization that Prophet didn't teach no law. So I'm getting ready to disprove that theory right now, because this is all law. Like I said, to submit a brief statement of our organization and also covering its inception, rise, and progress, and of the Mohammedan religion, which I hope will be satisfactory to you and be the means of causing you at all times to adhere to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and what? Justice. In your relations with who? Mankind in general. We all need to learn to love instead of hate. Not just Asiatics, all human beings. I furthermost anxiously hope this brief statement will help you to more clearly see the duty and wisdom of all times upholding those fundamental principles which are desired for our civilization, of our prosperity, such as obedience to what? Law, respect, and loyalty to what? Government, tolerance, and unity. Yet the Prophet didn't teach law. But that's okay. We organize as what? The Moorish Science Temple of America, or the Moorish Science Temple, in the year 1925. And we're legally incorporated as a civic organization under the laws of the state of what? Illinois, on November 29th, 1926. But yet he didn't teach law. The name Moorish Science Temple was changed to the Moorish Science Temple of America, May 1928, in accordance with the legal requirements of the Secretary of the State of what? Illinois. Sounds like law to me. What about you, Morris? The object of our organization is to help in the great program of lifting fallen humanity and teach those things necessary to make our members what? Better citizens. A national organization with a Rotarian complexion as it relates to branch temples because obvious with the increasing number of inquiries from men and women in different sections of the country concerning the purpose of the organization. There are branch temples in 15 different states at this time. Since the work of the Moorish Science Temple of America was largely religious, the organization has been legally changed to a religious corporation, and an affidavit to this effect has been properly filed in the Cook County Recorder's Office of Illinois. Inspired by the lofty teachings of the her Quran, we have it as the revealed word of God, Allah. We shall foster the principles of its teachings among our members. This is our religious privilege as American citizens under the laws of one of the greatest documents of all time, the American Constitution. With that, I yield, and I'm gonna call up our illustrious the one and only Grand Sheik, Lord Nature El Bey of Temple number 10, and he's going to take this a step further, I do hope. Thank you, Morris, and I'm going to step aside. Peace.
Peace.
Get there.
Hotep, the royal family.
Hotep.
Islam, rise unto the name of Allah, giving perfect honors to our prophet, last prophet in these days, Prophet Noble Ali. Giving honors to all of you. You want to fix it more? Good. Islam. So I'm going to try to get straight to the point. So we touched on what they call the 2020 census over the past couple of weeks. And they're pushing for the 2020 census for the different so-called ethnic groups, racial groups, etc., which these are fictional terms, but this is what the highlight is, and this is what the government is trying to push for people to collectively do within their chosen representatives. So this is huge. They've been trying to do this for years and decades. They don't have the collective support, so it's hard for them to, carry out their agenda with a division of the classification. And it's not necessarily the people, because they know who the people are and where they're at. They know how many people, and they know who's doing what. They own everything. But that's not the issue. The issue is they need the people to declare themselves who they are, because that's where the contract comes in. So I'm going to explain a couple of things. And this is also being done in other countries. Other countries are jumping on this bandwagon to do census, but every country doesn't have the same agenda. So they had the 2020 census. This particular article that I'm reading, just show you, got it offline. We're going to go into it. So it says the 2020 census will ask Black people about their exact origins. For the 2020 census, the U.S. Census Bureau is changing how it will ask Black people to designate their race. Under the checkbox for Black or African American, the Bureau is adding a new space on the census questionnaire for participants to write in their non-Hispanic origins, according to a recent memo from the head of the 2020 census. I want to hope when you study on your own time, you should always have a highlighter, all right? All your personal books that you have should all be highlighted all throughout your books. That's just one good rule of thumb on how to study. And just like I'm reading this to you, it's not my first time reading it. But as I read it and I catch certain things, then I highlight it for my own purpose so I can go back and investigate or put emphasis on that particular quote. But one thing that I want to highlight to you is it says the Bureau is adding a new space on the census questionnaire, which means that they already have one, correct? It says for participants to write in the non-Hispanic origins. So I want to highlight the word participants because participants indicates that it's voluntary.
Right.
This is why they're having a lot of issues with it. But I just want to bring this to your attention because you might have received something in mail, stuff might have been sent to your children's school, things might even float around at your job place. And some things might be worded where it might look mandatory, but you need to know that it's not a mandatory mandate, just for starters. I'm going to continue. It says African American in quotation. Then it says Jamaican and Nigerian are listed as examples of origins on a questionnaire that the Bureau is testing for 2020. Another highlight, testing. It's a test. It's more than a test. I'm just going to use their words and get more into what's going on here. And again, a lot of things we discuss, and it's not necessarily for us sitting in this room, but it's mainly for ammunition to teach others that might not be informed on certain things that we talk about. You know, so we're just coming with a collective way to communicate to other people to get them involved in the conscious movement. All right, so it's not about you being past a certain point that we'll talk about. It's mainly about we all in the same position and status that we share, that we need to get more people involved in the conscious movement. Without them, we're still just how they classified us. So I use things like this as tools to teach other people who might be still under the assumption that they're Black. You know, you need to get to them before they start filling out or participating in questionnaires and other silly nonsense and making more of a fool of themselves, but also they're still making a fool of us too by making a fool of themselves. Well, that might not be their intent, but through ignorance, they sell us out.
That's right.
So they said testing for 2020. The change means many Black people in the U.S., and U.S is abbreviated, so you know where they're coming from. But it says many Black people in the U.S. may have to take a closer look at their family trees
Mm.
to answer what can be a thorny question. Now, again, you know, it sounds like it's one of us writing this, but it's not. That's also why this is important. Yes, sir.
And he put the African American in quotes.
Yes.
He got a little bit of science himself.
Yes. And it's going to get, it's, again, like I say, a lot of times when you master your craft, it's not even about Moorish American. When you get into teaching and getting into law, you can stand strictly on common sense and law, and you can leave Moorish American out of it. Like the prophet says that don't get involved with religious controversy. It's not about religion either. So if you're trying to argue a point of law, you leave that out. It makes your argument stronger. But I want to go back because there's still a lot of we didn't go over yet. So it says African American, Jamaican, and Nigerian. So they have these names listed as synonyms. However, they're not synonyms. That should be the first question. Like we're just trying to instill common sense in people. Because common sense is really the law when you really understand it. But you put African American and Jamaican and Nigerian in the same status quo is wrong. So before anybody go even further, they should automatically check that, question that, and object to that. Why? Anybody? What's wrong with those quotations or the synonyms? Shatif.
Well, I would say the first one, Nigerian is actually a nation. It's actually a nation of people.
Mm-hmm.
The other two aren't.
All right, that's one. Islam, sis.
Geographic.
Yes, absolutely. Big difference.
That's right.
Islam. Islam, Mark, you at your hand up?
No, I was going to say the same thing with 3 different regions.
Several. But everything we covered is again, we're dealing with common sense. We got a foundation. We can question that. Somebody who doesn't know that, hasn't got that far yet, won't even question that to know that. They don't know that to question it. Yes, and like I said, we can go further, but again, that's enough. Yes, sir.
To anything pertaining to Islam, I'm from the majority. And I'm telling everyone here. I see it, thank you. I see it as they have 3 different classifications, but everybody from me growing up, African American almost meant anybody in Africa too. So it was like people coming from Africa coming over here, they were considered to be like African American or black. That's how they was looking at it. That's how I see it. So the Jamaican part is almost like you're still saying African American too, because they fall in the same category when they come here.
Yeah, that's another way of looking at it. Yes. And also, what will be the difference between, according to wording here, what would be the difference between African American and Nigerian? Yes.
Nigeria is in Africa, or so quote unquote Africa.
And where's African American? Where's African America?
There is no Africa.
Because African American denotes to a people, like what was said. But according, if that term is a fact, then there should be a term African America.
Islam.
And it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
That's where the sister was talking about
Geographical.
geographics. But let's just quickly get into what a nation is. Because it's making reference to nations. And like you already said,
Oh, okay. I see what you're
we're
saying.
not talking nations with some of them. Jamaica or Jamaican is relevant. It's relevant to, it fits modern day. However, anciently speaking, then it wouldn't fit. But even for modern day purposes, it fits the criteria now.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely.
So a nation, according to Black's Law Dictionary, is a people or aggregation of men existing in the form of an organized jural society, usually inhabiting a distinct portion of the earth, speaking the same language, using the same customs, and possessing historic continuity. Very important. And distinguished from other like groups by their racial origin and characteristics. And generally, but not necessarily, living under the same government and sovereignty. That's the law definition, or a law definition of nation. All right. So African American automatically is exiled from this conversation.
Absolutely.
You can't even put that in a census, period. However, most of our people already are under that allegation or assumption status.
That it is. Yeah, true.
That's our problem. That regardless of what we're calling ourselves, from the census perspective, they're still checking us off. If it's not even on paper, but in the back of their mind, they're still looking at us as African American. Until you challenge it. That's why it's important in custom and proclamation, declaration, and verbal objection. You must object to the allegations that's put on you.
That's right.
So nation, we got that. So African American does not indicate a jural society at all. So I'm gonna continue. This change means many Black people in the U.S. may have to take a closer look at their family trees to answer what can be a thorny question. What does the word thorny mean? Just throwing this out. Islam.
Sticky.
Difficult. I like that. Islam. So this becomes a difficult question for them to answer. We know that. But this is, again, someone else acknowledging that deals with this within these departments. It says, where are you really from? That's the thorny question.
Yes.
It's right after the quotation is here. Where are you really from? While many Black immigrants can cite ties to a specific country, listen to this. While many Black immigrants, what is a Black immigrant? But you got to think about it. You got to know what the word immigrant means. While many Black immigrants can cite ties to a specific country, that question is difficult, if not impossible, for many U.S. born African Americans to answer.
Wow, that's like spot on. Spot on.
I'm going to repeat that. It says that question is difficult, if not impossible, for many U.S. born African Americans to answer. Now that brings me to a quote Professor Drew said, being born here does not make you a citizen.
Oh, if you don't mind, Grand Chief,
Yes.
that brings to even more light to the quote George Washington said in 1774. If we remove the turbans and feathers from these Moors' heads and the sandals from off their feet, in 200 years, they won't even remember the land which they are currently on, or their ancestry, or who their forefathers are.
That's what makes
And
it
that statement
difficult.
is definitely spot on. That's
They invoked the thorny question.
sticky.
And again, we can go back to many documents, but also you can think that to Willie Lynch
Oh, yeah,
as well.
About the light skin and black skin.
So I'm going to continue. The Bureau has not responded to the NPR's question about why it is making this change to both the black category and the white category. And it's in quotations for both of them. Because black and white is a fiction,
It's the fiction.
according to census, race, ethnic group, etc. They're colors, but according to people, notwithstanding. Which also includes a new right in the area of origins. Before I go to that page, anybody got a comment or question?
That last part you said, can you repeat that?
It says, which also includes a new right in the area of origins.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense.
So, all right, I'm gonna continue.
No, but he's right.
But researchers at the Bureau have said that they have been trying to respond to requests for more detailed, disaggregated data for our diverse American experiences. Then I give some examples as German, Mexican, Korean, Jamaican, and a myriad of other identities. This is right out of the Divine Warning.
That's right. Right out.
And I quote again, the prophet said that if the Japanese, the Chinese, the Turks, the Arabians are all forced to proclaim their free national name before the constitutional government in which they live, then it's no more than right that same law should be forced on all other Americans
Citizens
alike. So again, they have all nation states listed in the criteria on the questionnaire. Black or African American or white doesn't even fit. Doesn't even make sense to the criteria questionnaire. It didn't make sense before as just black. And that's why Jesse Jackson pushed the African American. And the people rode that train because it sounded like it was more suitable for who they were as being descendants of Africa. So they solidified it and supported that whole African American concept. And it's due, and the intentions is for that to replace the black status. That's another reason they're doing this. Because some people subscribe to it, some people don't. They need the individuals to declare that, to make it a law, or a census, or a status. Remember, as long as they do it, then it can always be questionable because it's not in government's jurisdiction to name a nation of people. It's not in the representatives to do that. It's in the people themselves because they are the government. It's for the people to declare who they are in their national name. So black and African American are not national names. German, Mexican, Korean, they are national names. The Bureau was considering an overhaul to all racial categories that would have added checkboxes for the largest ethnic groups and a write-in area for smaller groups. You know how they put on applications, they put different races, then they say other,
Yeah.
checkbox, and they say other. They leave that option for you. That's what a write-in area is.
Right.
That means if they didn't put the multiple choice for you, then you write in, well, who you say you are. And that's what we do when it comes to applications where it doesn't have Moorish American.
Absolutely.
That's how you address the application.
That's how I do it. That's right.
Most people just so programmed that they think that they have to check one of the multiple choices. And that's how they get you. You can't be small-minded like that. And most important, you can't be afraid.
No. Definitely can't be afraid.
To object and check who you are. And I will continue. It says, but it will require the Trump's administration's approval of an Obama-era proposal to change the federal standards on race and ethnicity data, which census experts say the White House's Office of Management and Budget is not likely to move forward. You see, they have all of these departments of government, and within them, they share different jurisdictions to do certain things. And we have to really know the appropriate jurisdiction to voice certain opinions and objections to. This is why it's important to be involved a little bit in media, law, and know a little bit about what's going on.
Yes,
because when you have an issue or a problem, you got to know the right department to address. And sometimes we collectively, we have an issue with something and we just protest in the wrong manner. We'll send somebody a document that's not even pertaining to that department, and then we wonder why we can't get nothing done. You know, even court documents and court issues and lawsuits, you know, we're addressing the wrong department, the wrong party, the wrong jurisdiction. We're using an argument in the wrong jurisdiction. The argument might be right, but it's just in the wrong jurisdiction.
Just in the wrong place. That's right.
So this is quotations again. It says black from everywhere. That's how it starts it all. Everybody good so far?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. It says for Niyat Amare, the write-in area will allow her to be more specific about her black identity. So Niyat Amare is a person's name. And she's a quote unquote, I believe she's Nigerian, but I could be wrong.
Sounds Nigerian.
So this is her quote out her mouth now. This sister, Niyat Amare. I'm African. I identify as black, but I don't see myself as an African American. So I'm gonna repeat that. And again, people got mixed consciousness and stuff, you know. But just listen to the concept. Again, we have to teach Niyat Amare as well.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, hopefully she might view this, you know, and anybody else that is confused about this. I'm African. I identify as black, but I don't see myself as an African American, says Amare, who was born in Ethiopia. So I stand corrected. And now lives in New York City. We can't just be black as African Americans. This is Amari's quote again. They interviewed her. We can't just be black as African Americans, says Amari. We are black from Africa. She says, we are black from Africa. Period. We are black from the Caribbean. This is what she says. Period. Then she says, we're black from everywhere. You can hear some of the diversity among the African Services Committee, where Amari works as a legal advocate for immigrants in New York City. So for members of New York who want to continue this or take this a step further, you have a source of where you can go to further this conversation or bring clarity to the conversation, or whatever you choose. So they list a few members: Mandigo, Wolof, a couple other people, and it says they're all spoken by staff members at this Harlem-based nonprofit organization, where French is the common language in the office, according to Amanda Lugg, the director of advocacy for people living with HIV. Lugg says more detailed census status data about Black people's ancestry could improve the public health work at her organization, which offers free health screenings to immigrants. See, there's always a niche. Free health screenings to immigrants. This is a great step forward in terms of being able to get more specific information on who's actually living here, says Love, who identifies as Black British. This office has issues. Diversity, they said, I'm just saying issues. However, again, it's our issue. The Negro problem is our problem.
That's true.
So, we're not surprised.
No.
It sounds like a lot of our households, our family households.
Absolutely.
Not our individual households, but
Absolutely.
that's the issue amongst our people.
Absolutely.
So, it's no different. Kelly, the director of program operations at the African Service Committee, says asking for the people's origins on the census is likely to run into a major hurdle. Around the country, they're growing distrust in turning over personal information to the government. Are people willing to answer the question given to the current anti-immigrant sentiment? That I can tell, says Bekele, who is Ethiopian American. It's a concern shared by Christina Greer, a political science professor at Fordham University, who wrote Black Ethics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of Their American Dream. This keeps me up at night because it's not just about it's not just about filling out the census, she says. Greer warns that if fewer Black people participate in the upcoming census, there could be an undercount that would have impacts lasting long after 2020, including on the redistribution seats in the House of Representatives and drawing up legislative districts. Amari, I think I sent you this about a week ago, right? Did you get into this? Where are you from? That question again. Still, Greer says she's planning to write down Black American for her origins. I consider myself a J.B., which is just black, she says. When people ask you where you from, and I say, oh, you know New York, Philly, Chicago, Baltimore, or it's like, no, but where are you from? Many African Americans who have roots in the U.S. are going back to centuries to ancestors forced upon these shores as enslaved people cannot answer the question. I'm going to repeat that. It says many African Americans who have roots in the U.S. going back centuries to ancestors forced upon these shores as enslaved people cannot answer that question. So interpretation. She's saying that anyone born in the U.S., typically people referring to themselves as blacks or African Americans who were born here, are trying to trace themselves back to roots in Africa. But she's saying that they cannot answer this particular census question, where are you from? And it's basically what we were just saying and what we always say. African American has no roots, it has no nation. Black has no roots, has no nation. Therefore, you can't answer the question. So technically, like Noble Drew Ali said, not just being born here doesn't make you a citizen, but if you have no free national name and you have no descent flag of your forefathers, there's not a divine title in the government in which you live.
That's right.
Which means that you cannot be a citizen. Blacks can't be citizens of any constitutional government, which we know that. But this is other people is interpreting the same thing, that even under their status, Black American, they don't even have a clue on what the proper status will be, but they at least know that there's an issue and it needs to be addressed. Exactly. So these people are putting out a call to people who might have the answer to this. This is why we have to be involved with and get involved with other organizations in order to help clean up issues that might be underlying here. We can't just sit amongst ourselves and talk about what the issues are and be happy that we solve the issues within ourselves. That's not doing it. This is a movement. This is a quote again from her. If we're really honest with what hundreds of years of U.S. chattel slavery really meant, says Greer, many people had to walk miles across the countries before they were shipped out. Sticking with American is just a quote for this. The enslavement of hundreds of thousands of African people in the U.S. cut ties to home countries for their descendants, including Chris Owens, a project engineer for an energy consulting firm based in New York City. Raised in St. Louis, Owens says for most of his life, questions about his race were straightforward. Either you were black or you were white, at least where I'm from, he says. But after moving to Boston and later New York, he says he has been asked whether he is of Haitian or Jamaican descent. That's even caused me to try to figure out which island I was from, Owen says. He had just over 2 years to keep digging into family history for an answer before the 2020 census forms came out. But now, though, if you ask him about his origin, he says he is sticking with American. So this thing is sort of like what they call religious freedom. It's like based off citizenship, a person could just put down what they want. You know, and that's just now not how citizenship and government goes. It's not a multiple choice. It's not whatever you want it to be. You don't have freedom to your citizenship. You don't have freedom to your nativity or your nationality. And this nonsense only really exists here in America. Or what portion of America we're in. So Islam, I just want to point that out and show us some of the distractions that's going on. Yes, sir.
I wanted to add to what you was just speaking about. In the Holy Quran, Moorshine Temple of America, prepared by the Prophet of Chapter 47, Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa, Ayat 15. The time has come when every nation must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess his own. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery, due to the fact that they honor not the creed and principles of their forefathers. So it's shown right here. This one right here, 14, I'll go back to that. Every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. This really needs to happen. And to create their own laws and customs in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. I, the Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, was sent by the great God Allah to warn all Asiatics of America to repent from their sinful ways before the great and awful day that is sure to come.
Islam.
So that's why I just wanted to add that, because that's what it looks like it's talking about right there too.
Absolutely. And we just got to realize, I know we do realize this, but like El Haj says, that we've been bamboozled. So the enslavement itself got us to the point that we can't think, that we don't have common sense, that we don't question certain things, that we don't question nonsense. It's that program that was put on us. So the purpose of this movement is to break that program, to deprogram us to the point where once we're reprogrammed, now we can begin to think. And again, Drew Ali said that. He said, if I can just get you to think, he said, you could save yourself. And that's what this is really about. We're really just trying to get people thinking again. Once Moors start thinking again, Moors is all over the place. Moors are trying to grasp the highest heights. And you could just tell by every one of us and everybody else that's out there that we know the state we grew up in. We can reflect on how sleek we were. But we know where we at now. And that's because we're thinking now that we are deprogrammed. And that's just how the people at large need to be. Once that program is removed and they start thinking, then that's when we fix the overall mess that's going on. That's when people will wake up. The conscious movement will start to be in full effect, where people will start taking their rightful place in the affairs of men. Stuff like this is basic to us, but it's only basic to us because we're deprogrammed and we got a foundation now. So it's almost basic to the point where, like, man, I already heard this 100 times. I know that already. Yes, we do, but how many people know that? And my mission is not to keep going higher and higher in all these other sciences. This is the issue.
True.
Your leaders, your representatives, and all of these organizations out here are promoting this, and it's less conscious people promoting truth. When people get conscious, and that's another issue, people go in another direction to make money off of it. And they never really deal with the real cause. And that's the problem collectively that I spoke about last week, where we have a lot of brilliant people out here that they can overhaul our government. It's just that people, they're caught up in other areas, that they're not interested in that. Yes, ma'am.
Considering that House Resolution 0689 that comes out of Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
the other states have given the resolution as well. And even though we had this conversation about the quoting of, on the very bottom of the resolution, it states that they Moorish people
Mm-hmm.
who were emancipated in 1865, even for, for that purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that these individual states have already put that on the record. You would think that with the confusion with the nationality issue, as it seems, that they would go ahead and further promote that the Moorish people come from North, South, and Central America. And you think they would go ahead and just put that as a possible token, if you will, of nationality.
You mean for census purposes?
Exactly. Because it was already, different states have already indicated
Mm-hmm.
their own declaration
Mm-hmm.
of nationality for Moorish people, or at least they prescribe to that, the House Resolution 0689. Other states have done the same thing. So I'm saying that with this question of nationality or identification for census purposes, they should already have a foundation by which to help identify or give it to people to self-identify.
Let me ask you this. I know you know the answer. When they denationalized us, they knew who we were. So they deliberately buried that, just like Sheik just spoke about on Boy George and things that he did. It was their agenda not to acknowledge this anymore. That's what the last stronghold of the Moors is all about. That's what
That's right.
the chopping of the cherry tree
Yes.
and the flag coming down represents. That we're not acknowledging these people because now we own them for financial benefit is the purpose they did that. But
That's
my
right.
point is, and to your question, which you already know, it's not to their best interest to do that. So it's not like they don't have enough proof already. It's just, it's not the agenda for certain creditors and people who benefit from this. And it's not even to the best interest and to some of our leaders
No.
to try to make that change because they're benefiting off of it.
Exactly.
I don't want to get into this real quick, but we had what we call Martin Luther King's birthday the other day, which is a national holiday. it is a good token in a sense, and also a disappointing token in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to diminish what King did, because King did a lot of powerful things.
Yes, he did.
Trust me. When I talk about our leaders, like King could have been a marvelous grand chief.
Oh, yes.
If you understand and that's what I'm saying. If some of our leaders just took their rightful post, this thing would have been changed a long time ago.
Absolutely.
But you're not going to get too many more powerful people like King, who had a clear concept. And King taught Constitution. Don't sleep. Don't act like he was a religious dude, Reverend King.
No.
Outside of that,
He spoke
King knew that Constitution very well.
Yes, he did.
And he delivered the constitutional speech just in religious language because it was coded. So, I say I'm giving him his props, and we have to, again, that's where the prophet was talking about, don't throw away your Bible. I'm gonna use it to condemn the government. That's what King picked up on.
Yep.
King used the Bible to condemn them.
Condemned it.
So don't misunderstand what King was teaching and speeching and kicking. It's just that the jurisdiction of King and him being compromised, the full mission couldn't get accomplished.
No. And he said that too.
So I just want to throw that out there because it was King's Day, and I want to give honor to that. Also, I just want to give us motivation that we can't kick dirt on anybody if we're not going to take our post and do a better job. We can't condemn nobody. Yes.
During the last speech, it was stated that he mentioned that you're refugees in your own land.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, I think, an attempt, perhaps.
Coded again. Coded. It was a different era of time as well, but yes, definitely. King was on point. He knew it all. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Islam Grand Chief.
Yes.
I'm going to continue, but Dr. Martin Luther King, you made a quote that I think I made a mistake and threw my people. I'm looking at a burning house with this integration, and this is 3 days before he was assassinated.
Islam. So I'm going to continue. Islam. You had your hand up?
Yes, man.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Moors are very active, being active. There's honor to them, and they are getting things passed.
Mm-hmm.
Resolutions and all those things. At the same time, like the Grand Chief said, since 1774, they took our nationalities and our birthrights from us, our names and our principles, and one of them that they put out with resolution was what? Rex Alpha 84.
Rex, that's a military manual. That's not a resolution.
Right, but not a resolution. It's long.
Mhm.
King
Rex
Alpha,
84.
right?
Mhm.
And also that was to keep us at bay for the leaders that we were following before we learned our true selves,
Mhm.
to oppress us at that time when we was going to rise up.
Let me bring some more clarity to that. Let's not get that twisted either. That's an executive order.
Executive order. That's 84.
All right, and even if we might not know what that means, that's order to carry out. That's an order to execute what's in that manual.
Exactly.
That you got to be real careful about that. That's not just a resolution or a suggestion.
That's like the Christian
That's
black code.
anything that's an executive order is people are already trained to do that
That's right.
and know when to do that.
That's Rex 84.
To the point where you don't need the consent of a commander to carry those orders out. If the situation demands, you already know what it is. So let's, it's heavier than that. I just didn't want to downplay it and what that is. All right, because that's important that more should know as well. Because like I said, one day you might show up, or you know, you don't pay attention to the news. You might travel to the temple and temple closed. You need to know why. It shouldn't even get to that point. But I mean, if you're not in tune with what's going on, you don't know how to move and how to navigate, then that's a problem. But you got to understand codes, and because that's what we're talking about. You got to know how to read the situation. You got to know how to navigate. You got to know when it's safe, when it's not safe. When they come on TV and make certain announcements and they talking codes, you got to know the code. Because if you don't, you could be putting yourself in harm's way. Because they could be putting a code out there to carry something out in a certain area, and you don't know because you don't understand what's going on, and you put yourself in a situation. Yes.
Just to add on to what he's talking about, it was one of the Moors that was talking about the Rex 85 or Rex 84 the office plan. There's two things that I caught just the other day listening to it, is that it speaks of, they call themselves, I think it's a term in there, they call themselves Puerto Ricans and so forth. So it's that language that they're using in there, that they call themselves. And then at a certain part in that document, it says something about they will be a formidable enemy because of their attachment to the land or something like that in that document. So it's almost like they know who we are, or who we're, the misnomers, the labels that we call ourselves. But it's almost like they know that the attachment to the land is, you know, being true or not. That's what I read. I mean, I read it before. One of the Moors was on YouTube and brought that out.
All right.
They call themselves.
All right, Islam.
Just
Yeah.
one more thing I wanted to add. There was a book that I had got when I was in Temple 21. It was called the Branch Temple Information. That was by Brother R. Love Hill. In that book, he said that when the prophet, established the Moorish Science Temple of America, that it was supposed to be these lessons were supposed to be given to like all the institutions, and all the institutions were supposed to put it out, and that everyone should have basically known this by now. At that time, it was supposed to be broadcasted to where all institutions were supposed to have schools and stuff like that, and then they didn't carry that out.
They won't carry that out. That's our job. So I just want to continue and bring more clarity to nationality, all right, and what that means as it's pertaining to free national name and what we just read. So I'm still in the Black's Law Dictionary under the word nation. Remember, when you say my nationality, or you say proclaim nationality, or free national name, I want you to understand what the term free national name really means to people who know law, not to us. But what statement is that making? It says, besides the element of autonomy or self-government, that is the independence of the community as a whole from the interference of any foreign power in its affairs or any subjection to such power. It is further necessary to the constitution of a nation that it should be an organized jural society, that it is both governing its own members by regular laws and defining and protecting their rights and respecting the rights and duties which attach to it as a constituted member of the family of nations. So that's what that quote Drew said, come link yourself with the family of nations. By being a part and parcel of the United States of America Constitution and being a member or citizen of the Moorish American Juror Society, it also automatically connects you with the family of nations, which they also refer to as the United Nations or the International Family of Nations. It's all the same lingo. And this is why the first quote of the Divine Warning stipulates that the citizens of all free national governments, according to their national constitutions, are all of one family, bearing one free national name. I will continue. Such a society, says Vattel, has her affairs and her interests. She deliberates and takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person who possesses an understanding and will peculiar to herself and is susceptible of obligations and rights. That's a case law. The words nation and people are frequently used as synonyms, but there is a great difference between them. A nation is an aggregation of men speaking the same language, having the same customs, and endowed with certain moral qualities which distinguish them from other groups of a like nature. It will follow from this definition that a nation is destined to form only one state, and that it constitutes one indivisible whole. Nevertheless, the history of every age presents us with nations divided into several states. Thus, Italy was for centuries divided among several different governments. The people is the collection of all citizens without the distinction of rank or order. All men living under the same government compose the people of the state. That's we the people.
That's right.
And even in your Pledge of Allegiance, it's speaking the same language. Yep. In relation to the state, the citizens constitute the people. I know it's sounding redundant. It's going to irk your brain for a minute, but you got to understand this. You got to know the difference. So I'm going to repeat it. It says, in relation to the state, the citizens constitute the people. In relation to the human race, they constitute the nation. Everybody understand that?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to just repeat it one more time. All men living under the same government compose the people. The people of the state, that is. In relation to the state, the citizens constitute the people. In relation to the human race, they constitute the nation. A free nation is one not subject to a foreign government. And I think it was a few months ago we had a topic on this. I think Brother Omari was bringing this out on what is a free nation. Right? Y'all remember that topic or questionnaire we had? So again, now we can go right back to that because I think that also spilt over into a conference call, didn't it? So it was a lot of back and forth on that particular question or topic or phrase. And again, as we stated earlier, a member's interest must be in one direction, meaning that every member has to be on point with certain things pertaining to this. Because if we're saying that our nationality is the same, we have to have the same views on what that means. How do you define Moorish American? Because that's what constitutes the nation, not just you saying you Moorish American. Because if they can divide us, it's like, they pull you over and split you up in the car. And they want to know what's your standpoint, who is that person, or what's that person's name. They do that type of stuff. Now they start saying, well, he's saying he Moorish American, and you saying you Moorish American. What's your view on that? Well, how you Moorish American? What does that mean? What's your political ties? Your ID says consul authorized. Who's your consul? This dude over here said he don't have no consul. Person in the back seat saying something different. I've seen this, so I'm telling you exactly what goes down. So I'm gonna get back into this. What was that? All right. A free nation is one that's not subject to a foreign government. So he said that we must proclaim our free national name. And I'm only bringing emphasis on this is because I'm showing you how to argue and how to object when you're in situations of law. You do not want to leave words out, especially words like free. Free nation or free national name makes a distinction from national name or nation. Give you an example. We spoke earlier about we was talking about Nigerian, and we was talking about Jamaican, and we was talking about what was the other, African American. All right, where all three of those have different statuses, different state statuses, different nation states, and they're recognized differently by the International Family of Nations. So representatives of all those declared nations, if you will, can't argue the same type of laws. Give you an example. Jamaica is not a free nation. So you can't declare a free national name as Jamaican, although you can declare Jamaican as a nationality, but it's not a free national name. We're going to get into that. Neither is the United States of America. Neither is American. We're going to get into that too. A people is free when all the citizens can participate in certain measures in the direction and the examination of public affairs. The people is the political body brought into existence by community of laws. I'm going to repeat that. The people is the political body brought into existence by the community of laws, meaning by their own laws, not the laws that was already in the community. Understand the difference. And the people may perish with these laws. The nation is the moral body, independent of political revolutions, because it is constituted by inborn qualities which render it indissoluble. The state is the people organized into a political body. We all clear on that? I know that's a lot, but it needs further to be interpreted and broken down. You got to study it on your own time to really get clarity on what that's saying. But again, back to Sheik's demonstration earlier, you got to understand that Prophet Noble Drew Ali organized a jural society. He did not establish a religious institution. And you have to know the difference, because you're declaring political statements. And you have to know how to argue political statements if the question arises or you're put in that type of situation. You're not members of a club. It has nothing to do with that. Although we do have religious functions. We do have a shared religion that we declare, absolutely. The work of the Moorish Science Temple of America is largely religious, is his exact words. But it doesn't mean, and he didn't say that it's a religious organization. So understanding that just like King and other people had to say things in a certain way, so did he. So understanding our nationality being Moorish American, we got to understand that to even declare it as a free national name, but say that we're compromised or the Prophet didn't establish law and didn't establish a government, or we need to set up a government. Look at the statements of Moors saying, or we need to establish a government. Means that you don't, how can you be Moorish American and saying you need to establish a government? Then you're saying you don't have a nationality. You might as well say that we need to establish a nationality then. You can't have a nationality without having a government. So if you acknowledge the fact that you have a nationality, you have to acknowledge the fact that there's already a government in place, or else that would dissolve the fact that you got a nationality. But I'm just saying that the conception of law, some people just don't have it. They don't understand it. And their own words condemn them by making statements that they don't understand. And if you use these words, they will use your words against you, which they usually do. Any questions on that? Any questions at all? Islam. And everything I'm reading is strictly out of Black's Law Dictionary right now. This is their words. So again, you can get a good constitutional education strictly out the Black's Law Dictionary. And my suggestion to us as a whole, we spend a lot of time reading many books and listening to many lectures and different people's interpretation. We need to know more of the interpretation of the courts. It takes a lot of time to listen to lectures and go into a whole bunch of other stuff. Not saying if you got the time, then definitely go for it. But meaning that you need to know how the courts interpret certain words. You need to know how the courts interpret nationality. You need to know how the courts interpret right to travel or whatever you want to deal with. Don't worry about how Grand Sheik interpret it, or this person, or mayor this person, and chief this person. Don't worry about how they interpret it. Because when you're listening to their lecture, that's what you're getting, their interpretation of that phrase, word, subject matter, etc. Which might be good and might not be good. But at the end of the day, you need to know how the courts interpret that word. Because you can't bring what such and such told you and take that to court and expect to hold somebody else accountable to somebody else's interpretation. You need to know that beforehand, how they already interpret it. So your expectations is there. You know what to expect, and you know how to argue it. And I'm saying that because we live in a busy society where it's hard to study and grasp this information. And like I said, this is right out the law book. Like, we should already be past this collectively. We should already know what's in this law book pertaining to the subject matter, because it's in the law book. And when you come into the temple, this is one of the first things we suggest to everybody: go get a Black's Law Dictionary, 3rd, 4th edition. So before you start involving yourself in these political views, you need to have a foundation first. Know what you're getting yourself into. Know what Drew Ali even brought you. Know what that nationality card represents. So we have such phrase called American law. Everybody familiar with that term? Pardon me, Brother Mark. You had your hand up?
Uh,
I apologize.
no, it's fine. I'd rather give, I'd rather give praise to Allah, honors to Prophet Ali, honors to everything came to Islam. I remember the guest in attendance, Islam.
Islam.
Actually, you were speaking on something that I stepped outside the room and I just heard it from a distance.
All right.
And it was pertaining to something that you had mentioned. I think you was reading about. Because I was here when we were speaking about the article you read in regards to Jamaican, Nigerian,
Mm-hmm. The census document.
Right.
Yes.
Then you was reading to something, and then your point that I got from a distance that I wanted you to just repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Something in regards to their free national name.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering if you could just repeat that for me, for clarity for myself. I wasn't.
It was something I was reading or something I said?
It was something that you said, but I was in the back, so I couldn't. I don't know if you was reading it from the Black Law, like if you was stating it from the dictionary, or if it was just.
It did define a free nation.
Okay.
So what I camelbacked off of the fact that under the word nation,
Yeah.
in the 3rd edition, it does speak about what a free nation is.
Okay.
Is that the part that you missed?
Yes. I believe that's exactly what I missed out.
All right. So what I will do, I'm very quickly. It does say a free nation is one not subjected to a foreign government, whatever, or pardon self. A free nation is one not subject to a foreign government, whatever, be the constitution of the state. A people is free when all of the citizens can participate in a certain measure in the direction and an examination of the public affairs. And continues, but that's just that in the brief. And this is what this style of government in the United States of America is supposed to have, being a republic to which it stands. That's what that is supposed to reflect, that this is a free nation, free government, home of the free. That's what it's supposed to represent, where the citizens have a voice. However, it's not what is being practiced, but what it stands for and represent is that of a free nation. All right, so American law is what I want to make reference to. In American constitutional law, the word state is applied, and the state is in quotations. Why? Because state has several different meanings. We just read a few definitions of state. The word state is applied to several members of the American Union, while the word nation is applied to the whole body of the people embraced within the jurisdiction of the federal government. And that case was Cooley versus the Constitution. The word national, pertaining or relating to a nation as a whole, commonly applied in American law to institutions, laws, or the affairs of the United States or its government, as opposed to those of the several states. Islam. Islam. So just wrapping up on nationality and free national name, the importance why we proclaim our free national name is just what I want us to understand, and that's how we present it to other people, that they understand that they're coming into a body politic, a jural society, i.e. a government. So when we deal with constitution, flags, and etc., we're talking about what they refer to as national standards. And Drew Ali says that money does not make the man. It's free national standards and power that makes a man and what?
The nation.
And a nation. Islam. So in order for the nation to be where it needs to be, we need more national standards implemented into the nation. Doesn't mean everyone has to be a constitutionalist. Just means that at a minimum, because of the situation we're in, all Chinese citizens and babies don't have to argue Chinese law. It's because their nation has not been compromised like ours. So they're not going to be questioned on their status. So we got to understand that because we're declaring a nation that appears to be something new, it requires more of a defense. It requires more people to be more educated on what they're talking about, because it's not like the sister said earlier, it's not really acknowledged and recognized like that. So it makes a person say, well, what's that? Well, who's that? And now it requires an explanation. Japanese don't require an explanation. German American doesn't require an explanation, but Moorish American does, unfortunately. So unfortunately, the member has to at least have a foundation of what they're talking about. And like this census thing, that we to reflect back off of this is voluntary as of now. But if it gets to the point where it becomes mandatory, people gonna have an issue. Because people not knowing what to check or what to declare, just like Germany with Hitler, if you don't have the right answer, that could mean exile or life or death. So it's important that just giving them a statement is not going. We talked about Rex 84. Even that will demand proper communication of who you are and could determine how someone view you or what they do with you, whether or not you pass or don't pass. Just like going to a border, whether if you know what you're talking about, you might can pass. If you don't, they might tell you, well, listen, it's not happening today. It eventually will come to that type of situation where we have to know a little bit more than what we're saying. And we have to be more uniform too on identification and documents that we carry and that we present. So instead of, we're not at the step of the census declaration right now. We're still in the stage of collectively getting our people to be transparent, even Moors. Because Moorish American got several different declarations and identifications out there. We have to get more uniform before we can go and declare a census and declare a name for that. We have to get more transparency with the people within the nation. so that it will be transparent with government. And I'll give you an example quickly and then I'll close. But certain areas, local communities, leaders already went to Social Security and the local government departments, even DMV, and certain documentation is already acknowledged and accepted in certain areas. But now you come behind that with something else and they tell you, well, we're not familiar with this. And that's because it's not transparent. So now we put ourselves in a situation where they might recognize one document, but they might not recognize another document, but we're saying that we have the same status. And that's on a local level. So the goal is to get it transparent throughout the national government where everybody is on the same accord. And that's really the work of what we need to do and that we should work towards doing. Islam? Islam. So you had a question?
Someone in the chat.
Oh, Islam.
Rise, giving honor to Allah, great God of the universe. Praises to Allah. Honors to Prophet Noble Ali and all that pertains to Islam.
Islam.
Just Judith says, what kind of identification do you suggest?
Okay, so a question back that I'm asking is identification for what purpose? Because you have different identification for different purposes. For starters, when we proclaim our free national name, I suggest that it should be done within the Moorish Science Temple of America, because the Moorish Science Temple of America has original jurisdiction pertaining to Moorish American nationality and the government. That ties you to not just the Moorish American nation as a nation, but it also makes you part and parcel to the United States of America government. That's how Noble Drew Ali established it, and that's what they acknowledge. Remember this, the Moorish Science Temple identification card is the same as the nationality card. When you read it, it says that this is your nationality and identification card of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So it's an identification card. So for identity purposes, the nationality card is your first and immediate identification card that ties you to membership. It ties you to the protection of Drew Ali's program, and it also gives you the national and federal recognition that the United States know this nation to be. Now, the ramifications behind that is, we spoke about this last week, what Noble Drew Ali did with government and how they acknowledged Noble Drew Ali as the leader, where it was reciprocal. We understand what he did and the relationship he had with the government. What we got to also look at is, ever since Noble Drew Ali has passed, there has not been another representative that was more recognizable than Noble Drew Ali. Even though other members have came up after the fact and created their own identification cards and created their own government within a government, as you will, their own organization, their own auxiliary, whatever you want to call it. They did establish different things, but the question is that recognized by the United States of America government? Is that recognized by the Department of Justice? Is that recognized by this department and that department? That's what you have to ask yourself. So when you sign up for another Moorish organization, the question is that known and recognized not just by our nation, but by us also, the other nations of the earth?
Absolutely.
The Moorish Science Temple of America was presented at the League of Nations in 1928.
That's right.
These other Moorish organizations was not.
It's not.
So that's a question that The individual has to ask yourself, what has more credence? What has more pervasive value to it? How do you want to be identified, or what you are being identified as? I'll give you an example, another quick example. When I first came into the movement, not knowing what was right, what wasn't right, I'm signing up for different Moorish organizations because I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% founded in any of them. But some of them had this good point, that had that good point, and I want, I want to be straight, so I just signed up for different organizations, searching. One of the organizations or Moorish groups that I signed up with shortly after I signed on was federally investigated. And the administrators of that organization was arrested by the feds and charged with other stuff that I won't get into. But what occurred is, why I'm bringing this to your attention, is because the leaders or the founders of that organization, Moors, who they arrested and charged, they are accountable for what they did. But what they did was they seized all their files and they started investigating and questioning some of their members. And the members didn't have nothing to do with what the administrators were doing. But they still created a paper trail and looked into and questioned those particular members because they were members. They signed up for this and they was affiliated with that group. So you might have came in honestly and sincerely just trying to get a better understanding of who you are, trying to learn something. Totally innocent. But because they had some stuff that wasn't right going on, now they call that guilty by association. So before you just sign on to stuff, you need to look into the background of what you're dealing with and see, if that's what it says to be. Don't just sign up for something, because when you, again, the way people are doing this, and we talked about this last week, where do you get a nationality card? Who has the jurisdiction to issue nationality cards? That's part of knowing law. A member should know that. And we don't expect members, somebody coming in is not going to know law most of the time. Some of them do. But we can't expect everybody to know that. But that's our job. The leaders have to teach this so that people won't be bamboozled. You can save somebody damage by just teaching the right thing. But what occurs is, if you want to proclaim your nationality and you go through such and such Moors of America, just making that term up, that appears to be a Moorish group. They said they got their own government, they got their own constitution. So now what occurs is, more, what I called it, I forgot that quick. Moorish, what did I name that group?
Yeah,
Something. Yeah,
Of America.
Moorish something of America, whatever, right? So you proclaim your nationality through Moorish something of America. Now you're going to receive identification from Moorish something of America. Moorish something of America is claiming to be the national government. And then they're giving you not just an identification card, but they're giving you a nationality card that says on the header, Moorish something of America. So what you're telling the national government and the family of the earth is, this is your government, Moorish something of America. So now the question becomes, is that known and recognized? So again, I'm not saying it is or it's not. I just made that up. I'm just saying it's up to you to question what and who that is and what type of governmental relationship do they have. Because if it's none, then that means your identification is null and void on that level. It's only recognized between that group, more something of America. It's no different from a club ID. And I'm just telling you the truth.
No, it's true.
The thing is, Moors have presented this as if any Moor can just jump up and establish a government and it's valid. And it's just as transparent as the Moor Science Temple, and that's false.
That's false. That's absolutely.
And too many of them are getting away with it because there's not too many people understanding the law and is willing to stand up to that. That's why it's even a question. So I hope that answers the question. If not, then they can represent it. Islam? Islam. So can you, sister, check and make sure that question, there's no more questions on the chat?
So the question that she said, you said for what?
Yes.
And she said for work, travel.
So on a lower level, far as work, travel, employment, things of that nature, any idea probably suffice to people, agencies that you're dealing with, because they put a pawn at most of these agents anyway, agencies. So they don't really know the difference between Moorish something of America and Moorish Science Temple of America and whatever, and Nation of Islam. They don't know the difference anyway. So usually any ID will really pass for that type of situation. However, is it a national identification? No. If you're using more something of America. If you had to deal with a municipal court, it might even pass, because even on a municipal court, they're no different. They're a private organization. They're what they call a quasi-government. A municipal corporation is not a government. Just for those who don't know. Municipal or city government is referred to as quasi-government. That means it's color government. It appears to be government, but it's not. They are functioning as it, but they're not official that. That's what quasi means. So whenever you're dealing with municipal, all traffic violations and municipal ordinances is in quasi jurisdiction. This is what Moors start to begin their Moorish their fight, their exercising on municipal level. And this is where they get the ego up at. Municipal is quasi. Just you have to learn there first, though. That's where you learn. You don't jump right into no federal venue. You better not. But you learn dealing with that. That's like when you come in and first you proclaim your nationality. We tell you where to go. You start on the local level. Go change your cell phone bill. Correct your name on your cell phone bill. You start arguing with people like that on a lower level, which is not government. So more something of America ID will work for your cell phone bill. It might work at a bank. It might work in different areas. So you start there and you build your confidence up. But eventually, if you want to get into more higher jurisdictional issues, as far as federal court, Supreme Court, one-day world court, or whatever, you start dealing with customs and national, international relations, then you really want to have the proper identification. Like what they're pushing, a real ID, you want to have a real Moorish ID. And a real Moorish ID is a nationality and identification card from the Moorish Science Temple of America.
Absolutely.
Islam. And again, not to discredit other Moorish auxiliaries, because you can have an ID from that, but just understand how far it goes and what the purpose of it is. You don't want to present it as something else on a national level, and that's misrepresentation on your part. Islam. Me personally, you already know how they view Moorish American anyway. So if you're gonna present that, you at least want to have Drew Ali in your corner. Drew Ali doesn't support those other organizations. He didn't establish that. He wasn't around then. He can't defend it. He didn't invoke it. He didn't consecrate it. He didn't work it on a national and international level. So now you taking something that's new and trying to work it. If that's within your will and your measure, then go for it. But again, you got to, you still got to be linked, just like with Great Seal National Association of Moorish Affairs, when that started, in Clock of Destiny. In order to be a member of that, you must first have a Moorish Science Temple of America degree and a nationality card from the Moorish Science Temple of America. That was in its own bylaws.
That's right. That's right.
That you cannot be a member of Great Seal without being a member of the temple first.
That's right. That's right.
And people to this day are still violating that because people are misrepresenting what Great Seal represents.
Right. All Clock of Destiny.
Or absolutely, or Clock of Destiny, or any other Moorish organization. If any of the Moors is holding auxiliaries, they should still direct members to get a Moorish Science Temple of America education first.
That's right.
And present it that way, as this is an addition, an addendum, an auxiliary. This is an addition to whatever the Drew Ali set up. It's not to overplace or overthrow what Drew Ali did. Yes.
There's two questions here. One is, what is your position on the Moorish American consulate? And then the second question is, how do we travel internationally with just an MST of A ID or a U.S. passport?
Or just a U.S. passport?
With an MST of A ID or a U.S. passport?
To answer that question, if you traveling international or abroad, as they call it, you should have a Moorish nationality card from the Moorish Science Temple of America, as well as a passport from their agency, the U.S. Passport Agency. And together you present that to the agent that you're dealing with to show them your real identification and your nationality. And the passport is exactly what it means. It's just a passport. It's just for passing. You're just passing through, but it's not your nationality. It's not an identification at all. It's just a passport for passing through a port. But in order to pass through a port, you have to show and be accompanied by a real nationality to be recognized as such. Now, you can, like somebody that's just under the assumption of black, can go get a passport and they can pass through the port. They will allow them to pass through, but their status in that other country is a slave. Those agents will automatically acknowledge them as corporate wardship. They will let them pass. They'll let them into the country. But if they have any issue while they're in that country, their status is wardship. Remember, you only get a first chance.
Make a first impression.
Make your first impression, right? When you present identification to people, you want to make that first impression of who you are. Moors always do this, and I've seen them. They try to just sneak through stuff, not talking about the ports, but just situations. They do this at their job. They do it with children in school, so they try to get through things. And then when an issue arises later, they want to come back and argue status and argue that they're more, and then the religion is this and this and that. And it's kind of late in the game to implement your status after the fact. You're going to go apply for a job. On that application, you need to state who you are then. You don't come back 6 months later when you need to do something, or when they trying to infringe on you, and then you want to say, well, I'm Moorish American. You can't do that to me. Now you create a situation that could have been resolved. And if you have to go through a discrimination suit and this comes out in court, they're going to go back to your original application. Talking from experience, seeing that, and I'm telling you how it is. So make a first impression whenever you deal with people, agencies, government. Always declare who you are first. That way there's no misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding later. Remember, if you don't, the name you were born with, some people refer to as a government name, is assumed and allocated on record as a Christian name. Your religion goes in as a default as Christian, regardless if you declare that or not, regardless if you ever been to church or not. John Doe status with government is Christian. John Doe's name is a Christian name. Look it up. Look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. So when you present your name to someone, declare your appellation, if you don't declare it the right way, then in their policy or system or corporate policy, you're on paper under a Christian name and under a Christian religion. Yes, Dred Scott and a whole lot of other people too. Islam. The first question what was asked was consulate.
She also wants something to add on to this.
Let me address the consulate first, please.
Okay.
Real quickly.
Quickly. She says, what is your position on the Moorish American consulate?
My position is the Moorish American consulate that had been established since 1929 officially consists of a Supreme Council and a grand body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. That's what the founders set up. So the council or the consulate, Drew Ali referred to as the council, the Supreme Council. That's the true council or consulate. Consulate indicates foreign relations. So our governmental body or representatives or administrators, unfortunately, lies within our Supreme Council and our grand body. Am I happy with that position? No, because of how they're acting. So our job is to overhaul or clean up the Supreme Council and the grand body of the Moorish Science Temple. That way we can have proper representation.
Absolutely.
Am I for overthrowing that and setting up a new consulate? No. So I hope that answers the question.
Last question. Well, next question.
Remember that the Moorish Science Temple has original and general jurisdiction pertaining to a council or consulate of Moorish affairs. And that's not my words. I'm using modern day words, constitutional words to describe Drew Ali's words. And that's only a question because the Supreme Council and the grand body is not doing their job that we would like them to do, where Moors have attempted to reform that and institute a new one under other names.
Right.
But I will never go to a federal tribunal and mention the word Moorish consulate.
No. Not the way it is.
And why? Because I can't back it up. Maybe somebody else can back it up, but I can't back it up. I can back up a Supreme Council on the grand body. I can work that. But I'm not going to mention something that I can't support, and I don't have the background to prove it. Islam. So that will end our session for today. Islam. You got the last word.
Yes. First I rise and
Islam.
first I rise, all praises due to Allah, honors to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, to the Grand Sheikh, Sheikhs, and to all the Sheikhs, and all that is pertained to Islam.
Islam.
Kind of in brief, I wanted to know what would be the argument if you presented your Moorish Science Temple of America ID let's say to a government office or municipality or something to that effect, and they rejected it, saying we go by driver's license as an ID. What would be the immediate argument on that?
Well, it's hard to argue policy. When somebody tells you, there's a difference between a law and a policy. A lot of corporations have policies, and to participate with their privileges or their policies, then you have to go by what they accept, and that's the condition that we're dealing with. The Division of Motor Vehicles. We spoke about this last week too, because the Division of Motor Vehicle is not government, and it's not the state. So they're a corporation with policies. And their policy, the police department enforces their policies. They're not enforcing the law. So the policy says that you have to have a driver's license. So it's just like a passport. If you want to enter that country, then you're going to have to present them with a passport. If you don't support that idea, or you don't want to pass, then you just don't go to that country. Not to say on land is a little bit different. You can argue and you can travel without that, but you got to be educated to do that, and it's going to be a case-by-case basis. So there's no one argument I can teach responses to that, but I won't tell you that there's no response out there, and no one out there can give you a response that's going to be effective in every situation. So you go to the bank and you present your mortgage identification card to the bank to open up an account. They have a policy. They're going to tell you what they accept and what they cannot accept. You can't force them to accept your ID. And there's no law saying that they have to accept your ID. It's voluntary. They have a policy. If you can't convince them to accept your ID, then you go to another bank that will. So again, you got to choose your battles and navigate accordingly. You have to look at what's more important to you, what you need to do, and exactly what's a necessity, what's not a necessity, and that's how you got to navigate. Islam was. Was that question relevant or important? Do I need to address it, or can it be tabled to next week?
Well, yeah, two people are asking, so. Whatever.
What's the question?
This is about, and I think you kind of answered it now. It's about international travel. It says that I'm concerned about putting my free national appellation on a U.S. passport. And then it says, so do we put our appellation on the document? Doesn't that make us a U.S. citizen? And
No.
The final part of this is, yeah.
You can't become a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizen doesn't exist, number one.
So their concern is travel.
The name is going to be in all capital letters, which represents a commercial entity. It's not you. Your free national name is written in upper lowercase letters, which indicates a natural person. So you don't want to be afraid of they're going to default that into the system anyway. This is why we do other things, which we'll talk about later, to come back and neutralize that. But they're only going to recognize you as the U.S. does not recognize natural persons, period. So even in their in their system, their members is all corporations. Everybody and everything is commercial. There are no natural persons in the U.S. So you're not putting your free national name on a commercial instrument. You're putting a commercial name on a commercial instrument. That's your name that you created. You become the first lien holder to that name, so you own it.
Right.
That's not compromised. You can make it compromised by how you deal with it and what you allow creditors to do with it, but that's another conversation. But don't be afraid by doing that. You should only do business as who you say you are. You should never have two names. One name, your government name should be your free national name. And on artificial documents, it should be written in all caps, because that's not reflecting a natural person anyway. That's your own trust that you created.
Right.
Moors just have to learn that. That's another step. But the first step is proclaim that free national name. Yes, get that done. Driver's license, social security card, passport, if you will. Those are all commercial instruments. They all going to reflect all capital letter name, which is a commercial entity that you created. You don't want to use one that they created. So their name reflecting their family parentage name is what they created. You do not want to use any instruments with their family name on it, their surname on it. That's where the enslavement, entrapment comes from. So if you're going to have one, if you say I don't want one, then that's one conversation. I respect that. But don't say, well, I'm going to have one, but I'm going to have one under another name because I don't want my free national name on that. That's against the law. That's against everybody's law, national and international. You do not want to get caught in that situation. Islam, that will be the last question we entertain for the day. Islam, thank everybody for being patient. Islam, I'm going to close out in lieu of the additional laws, prophets' warnings. We're not going to repeat them at this time, but we will chant, harmonize them spiritually. Islam, hope we do that all the time. Islam, but for now, we're going to rise and face the east and observe the Moorish American closing prayer. All those who do not wish to participate in the prayer may stay seated in silent benediction. All those that do, we rise and face the east. 5 fingers on the left, 2 fingers on the right. And repeat after Sister Jamila.
May Allah bind our hearts and minds, back to our ancient forefathers, divine freedom principles, in this we ask, the 7 Elohim,
In our holy name. Amen. Islam. Meeting is now closed, Morris.
I'm trying to get
First
this
of all,
to
how much I owe you?
whatever you want this donation.
Give me a number, please. I don't know what
I put it.
you have to go through to get it. I don't know what expenses you incur to get it. So just give me a number. Please, just give me a number.
But I'm going to put it back into the fund anyways.
Just tell me so that I can clear the debt with you.